Hey, what's up, O3? I see YouTube's gonna be playing with my notifications again. God damn it. What's up, Charlie? I was thinking, dang, YouTube's gonna be playing with my notifications again. How you doing? Eat your broccoli? How you guys all doing, man? Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you guys as always. Can I see the museum out that window? No, that's the church across the way there. The museum, it's to my left here, all the way down the street past the stoplight. Yeah, it's just a church across the street. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, it's been kind of cloudy all day. A lot of cloud coverage and cold outside. But I figured since the sun was out, I'd jump on my bike and head up over here to the library. Yeah, dull and gloomy outside. Yeah, cheerful inside. Okay, we got 7 in chat. We got 5 thumbs up. Guess we can go ahead and get right into it. Hello, Cindy D. How you doing? Welcome to my live stream. All right, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get right into it. This is the next story. So Charles P. Stanton, the Puppet Master. The 8 desperados rose from the desert floor like a deadly mirage in the torrid July heat, descending on the lone wagon as it made its way along the sun-baked road. With little fanfare, they grabbed the driver and stabbed him to death as his family watched in horror. As the mother and her 2 young frantically pleaded for their lives, a bald-headed man with no eyebrows or eyelashes grabbed the woman by the hair and head back while another slit her throat. Damn, we're already off to a good start. Shit. Within seconds, the boys met the same fate. Wasting no time, the men methodically scalped their victims, tossed the bodies into the wagon, confiscated the strong box, and set fire to the carriage, obliterating all traces of the Barney Martin family. From a nearby hilltop, a man watched as the massacre went down. The smell of burning flesh not at all unpleasant to him. An evil smirk played across his smarmy face as the 8 men rode up the hill and dropped the strongbox at his feet. Taking his share of the loot, Charles P. Stanton headed back to Antelope Station, a small mining community near Wickenburg, Arizona. He stashed his plunder in a secluded spot, poured himself a glass of the finest Irish whiskey, and tasted his success. He had just masterminded a reprehensible crime without getting any blood on his lily-white hands. When the remains of the Martin family were found on August 8, 1886, almost 3 weeks after they had disappeared, a few bone fragments were left to bury. Charles P. Stanton, the man who had instigated this atrocious crime, preferred the title Lord Stanton, claimed he was the son of an Irish aristocrat. Of course, there's no proof of his lineage, just as there would be no proof perpetrated some of the vilest offenses in Arizona's history. And that's him standing outside of his store. As a young man, Stanton attended Dublin's Trinity College and entered Monmouth Monastery in England to study for the priesthood. However, he was expelled from Monmouth either for stealing from the coffers or for immoral acts. Whatever the reason, he departed England for America with a bounty of 1,000, whatever the currency in England is. I don't know how to pronounce that, on his head. Few records exist of Stanton's first few years in the United States, but he was probably in his mid-30s when he filed for U.S. citizenship in New York City in 1864. By the time his petition was granted on August 26, 1872, he was already creating a westward path of destruction. He may have been involved in the John Slack and Philip Arnold diamond hoax that erupted across the country in 1872. Two prospectors had liberally salted the Wyoming hills with inferior diamonds and rubies and passed them off as valuable precious stones just waiting to be plucked from the ground. Wealthy, intelligent people spent millions of dollars investing in this fraudulent scheme, never believing a couple of destitute miners could outsmart them. Some believe Stanton may have gotten his hands on a sizable amount of the profits from this venture. No proof exists of his involvement, but chances are he was running from the law when he arrived in Arizona Territory in the early 1870s. He went to work as an assayer and gemologist for Sexton White, owner of the Vulture mine near Wickenburg. After the mine closed down, he continued to analyze prospectors' ore findings, usually with some of the gold dust ending up in his pocket. The miner no wiser than a blind owl. Stanton settled in Antelope Station at the base of Rich Hill, where one of the richest deposits of placer gold was discovered in 1863. Prospectors dug out more than 10,000 gold nuggets in just a few months, and the mountain continued to yield its wealth over the next few years. By the time Stanton showed up, however, the mountaintop had little left to offer. Miners still clung to the hope of finding another big lode, but most turned to farming and ranching for their livelihoods. Antelope Creek and the nearby Hassayampa River provided ample nourishment for crops and cattle. Pioneer ranchers Charles and Ida Genung, well respected in the Wickenburg area, were impressed with the sophisticated and knowledgeable assayer and welcomed Stanton into their home to educate their 3 daughters. It wasn't long, however, before the girls complained their new tutor touched them inappropriately. Never one to waste words or actions, Ida grabbed her pistol and ordered the Irishman out of her house, never to return. From then on, Charles Gannon kept a close watch over Stanton's dealings. By 1875, Antelope Station contained a five-stamp mill, a boarding house, and about a dozen houses. A post office was established and Stanton was elected postmaster, although many of the names that showed up on the election ballots were also found on nearby gravestones, leading many to suspect the new postmaster had rigged the election. However, we heard this before. And getting votes from dead people. I know I've heard that somewhere before. I know you guys have heard that too. Before long, he had also accepted the duties of deputy sheriff and justice of the peace, and then proceeded to rename the town. Antelope Station became known as Stanton, Arizona Territory. The new name lasted about 6 months before voters were able to reestablish the community as Antelope Station. The men ran rival stage stops and stores in the bustling township, competing for business from stagecoaches making their way to and from Phoenix, Prescott, and the Colorado River towns. Store owner Yaki Wilson endeared himself to hungry passengers by raising his own beef and hogs and preparing hearty meals greedily devoured after a tedious journey. Plus, his homebrewed whiskey, well known and desired throughout the territory, was also a thirst quencher after a dusty ride. When the stage company added a barn to house and feed its horses near Englishman William Partridge's place, coaches no longer stopped at Wilson's establishment. The passengers, however, preferring Wilson's food to Partridge's less than edible victuals, often got off of Partridge's and walked the half mile to Wilson's to eat. There was no love lost between the two men. Stanton also set up a general store, but most people preferred to avoid the often rude and offensive shopkeeper. What Stanton really wanted was a lucrative stagecoach business benefiting the other two establishments. Befriending both men, he devised a malevolent scheme to eliminate his competition. Whoever let Wilson's hogs loose knew exactly where they would head. The porkers loved the bucknut shrubbery and prickly pear fruit that covered Partridge's property. However, the swine did not know the outside from the inside and invaded Partridge's house, creating a considerable mess. Aware of the escalating feud between the two men, Stanton judiciously advised Wilson to apologize to Partridge for his swine's behavior and to pay for what he had ruined. Out of the other side of his mouth, he informed Partridge that Wilson was out to kill him. Rifle in hand, Partridge met up with the apologetic Wilson and shot him before the poor man could utter a word. When Partridge realized Wilson had come to him unarmed, he fled into the desert. Following the fugitive, Stanton persuaded Partridge to turn himself in. At the trial, Stanton testified against the woeful Englishman, solidifying the poor man's conviction for second-degree murder. On November 2nd, 1877, Partridge was sentenced to life in the Yuma Territorial Prison. With his two rivals now out of the way, Stanton became the most powerful man in Antelope Station. He was ready to step in and take over the two businesses abandoned by the death of Wilson and incarceration of Partridge. However, Wilson had a partner, John Timmerman, who decided to run the Dead Man's Store. Partridge's creditors hired Barney Martin to run the other station. Stanton was furious. He had lost out on these two lucrative holdings and decided he needed more muscle. Francisco Vega, a big ugly man with little hair anywhere on his head, led a band of desperados who enjoyed a reign of terror over central Arizona, looting and killing at will. They made their headquarters in Weaver, a nearby ramshackle mining settlement that catered to renegades and criminals. Travelers fleeing for their lives often avoided this part of the country. Stanton hired the malevolent outlaws whenever he needed a particularly cruel or vindictive deed accomplished. He was about to use their expertise against his competitors. If you drink from the Hassayampa River, you'll never tell the truth again. Though I played many times in the Hassayampa, I never drank its water. Huh? How do I know you're telling the truth there, Cindy? Is that for real? The inexperienced Timmerman had greatly accepted Stan's offer to assist him with the store's books, so when Timmerman set out for Wickenburg one day, he told Stan he had $700 in gold dust with him to pay off a San Francisco merchant. As Timmerman sauntered down the dusty road to Wickenburg, Juan Raval, one of Vega's men, suddenly appeared beside him. With little conversation between the two men, Revel shot Timmerman through the heart, relieved him of the gold he carried, doused the body in oil, and set it on fire. Stanton watched the slaying from a safe distance. He and Revel split the proceeds of the heist, adding to Stanton's blood money stash. At the time, no evidence linked Stanton to the crime. You don't know, and that old wives' tale is what I was raised with. Hmm? Alrighty. Appointing himself appraiser of Timmerman's estate, Stanton also named himself the store owner's sole beneficiary. He had accomplished half of what he set out to do. Now only the Martin family stood in his way. When Barney Martin started receiving death threats, he initially dismissed them as pranks. But then his barn burned down, and soon after his house lay in a heap of smoldering cinders. He rebuilt the house, but as he again watched it go up in flames, he saw Stanton running from the fire. Grabbing his rifle, Barney took aim, but his gun had been tampered with and did not go off. Disgusted and distraught, he knew he had to get his family out of harm's way. Martin sold his property for $5,000 and set out that hot July day in 1886 for a new beginning in Phoenix. The two-day trip was eased by an overnight visit with friends, and Barney expected Charles Genung to accompany him on the road into Phoenix. But Genung had been delayed on business and never met up with the Martins. As Barney steered his horses along the well-rutted road, Miss Martin kept her eye on their two boys, aged 9 and 11, bouncing about in the rear of the wagon. Their clothes covered in layers of road dust. She despaired of ever getting them clean again. Stanton knew Martin carried the money from the sale of his property. As one of Vega's men later confessed, Stanton hired the outlaws to eliminate all traces of the Martin family, insisting they make the massacre look like the work of raiding Indians. Elano Hernandez, one of the vilest men to walk the earth, ordered Barney out of the wagon and slit his throat before Martin could grab his gun. Damn. It's cold-blooded, man. Genung knew Stanton was behind the killings and would not let the investigation rest in the hands of lawmen who were under the Irishman's control. As his grandson Dan P. Genung would later write, his grandfather went to see Miss McGinnis, who often cooked for the Vega gang. She claimed the killers got drunk one night and bragged about the murders. They laughed, she said, when they described how Miss Martin, who had often cared for Vega's wife and 4 children, pleaded with the outlaws to spare her and the children. As she clung to his knees begging for their lives, Vega thanked the distraught woman for her kindness to his family, then grabbed her hair so Hernandez could slit her throat. The boys shortly lay beside their mother. The outlaws' only disappointment, said Miss McGinnis, was that Genung was not with the Martin family as expected. Stanton wanted Genung out of the way. The rancher had become too suspicious of the Irishman's covert activities. Stanton reveled in the authority and power he now held over this town. Even the tombstone epitaph described the little burge as Bloody Stanton. Disasters haunted this district, but no one could touch Lord Stanton. After a rancher refused to buy supplies from Stanton's store because his prices were too high, the cattleman found himself watching helplessly as his property went up in flames. A safe distance away, Stanton warmed himself from the heat of the fire. Two cattlemen caught Francisco Vega trying to set fire to their ranch house. They lectured the outlaw, told him never to come near their property again, and let him go. Shortly, a large grass fire forced the ranchers to relocate more than 1,400 head of cattle hundreds of miles away to Tombstone. Vega and Stanton enjoyed a good laugh and a stiff drink as the cowboys herded their cattle out of town. Back in 1870, Dennis May had discovered the profitable Leviathan gold mine. Stanton told May not to worry about filing the proper yearly paperwork to keep the mine in May's name. As Justice of the Peace, he would handle it. But Stanton never filed the annual assessments and eventually threatened to report May if the prospector didn't give up half interest in one of the most lucrative gold mines in the district. An irate May was so disgusted over his forced partnership with Stanton that he sold his remaining interest in the mine for a mere $10,000. Let's see. About the same time the Martin family disappeared, E.O. Grant's store in Wickenburg almost went up in flames when someone threw a ball of oil-saturated cotton through the shed window when several barrels of oil and liquor were stored. Tracks led to the Vulture Mill and then towards Stanton's place. Charles Gunung experienced Stanton's vindictiveness when one of his houses burned down. But the worst devastation occurred when young girls crossed Stanton's path. More than one bore the marks of his brutality. Some disappeared after run-ins with the debaucher. 14-year-old Furlano Lucero survived a violent attack perpetrated by Stanton, but her brothers demanded satisfaction for their sister's honor. Pedro Lucero and his brother watched one day as the burly Stanton headed down the road. Pedro took aim and fired, but his bullet only nicked the Irishman's ear. His brother missed altogether. Irate over the attack, Stanton offered a $5,000 reward for Pedro, dead or alive. He also issued warrants for the entire town of Weaver, certain he would catch some of the Lucero family in his net. When he could not locate his ear-piercing enemy, he swore out a warrant for Pedro's father. Under Stanton's orders, deputies arrested the frail 60-year-old and beat him senseless as they escorted him into Prescott and locked him up. God damn. So the fucking tyranny was fucking... It existed back then too, shit. That's fucked up, man. Fucking being a 60-year-old man and throw him in the jail there. Damn. He was eventually released when Gunung paid his bail. In September 1886, Juan Raval, serving time on an unrelated charge, confessed he had murdered timbermen on Stanton's orders. He also admitted his part in a stage robbery that netted 3 gold bars, one of which ended up in Stanton's hands. Already the prime suspect behind the Martin murders after another of Vega's men, an Indian, confessed to following Stanton's orders in the brutal attack. Lord Stanton was arrested and taken to Phoenix, but the testimony of a convicted felon and an Indian outlaw were not enough to keep him behind bars. No concrete evidence materialized linking Stanton with any of the crimes of which he was accused, and he was released. He boldly wrote... Excuse me. He boldly rode out of town on one of Barney Martin's horses. On the evening of November 13th, 1886, as he often did on a Saturday night, Stanton closed the door of his store and offered a drink to one of his cronies named Kelly, or Kelly. It's pretty much the same thing, and I don't know why they put in parentheses with the EY at the end of it. As they nipped at their whiskey, they heard horses ride up. 3 men stood politely in the doorframe requesting directions to Walnut Grove and asked if they could camp nearby for the night. They also wanted to buy some tobacco. Stanton invited the men inside and went behind the counter to retrieve the smokes. As he turned toward the men, one of them aimed straight at Stanton's heart and did not miss. The 3 Lucero brothers fled as Kelly opened fire. One never made it out of the yard. Some say Kelly killed the man, while others believe he was hit with a bullet from one of his own brother's guns. Hey, what's up, Ubers? No one bothered to investigate, much less arrest, the individuals who ended the life of Charles P. Stanton. Everyone sighed in relief and gave thanks. Lord Stanton was no longer the aristocratic puppet master who controlled the strings of power in the tiny hamlet of Antelope Station. Hey, thank you for being here, you guys. I appreciate you guys. News also spread that Francisco Vega, the bald-headed man with no soul, had escaped into Mexico, although Charles Genung later heard the outlaw had been gunned down near Wickenburg, running from a stagecoach robbery. In 1895, mining engineer George Upton bought the town of Antelope Station, but its population was rapidly declining. For unknown reasons, in 1896, the community voted to return the town's name to Stanton. As the Great Depression raged across the country in the late 1920s, the mining community experienced a small revival when dozens of out-of-work, hungry men set up lean shacks and tents and tried to eke out a living working old placers. Over the years, the old post office opened and closed as often as the saloon door. Shut down in 1890, it reopened in 1894. By 1905, the town fell into a permanent downhill demise and the post office was officially discontinued. The town never again experienced the days when gold and Charles P. Stanton were its masters. In 1959, Upton's niece, who had acquired the town after her uncle's death, sold part of Stanton to the Saturday Evening Post magazine. It would be the grand prize in a jingle contest. The rest of the town was eventually sold to the Lost Dutchman, a mining association. Today, Charles Stanton's legacy can be found scattered among a few old adobe buildings, an infinite assortment of prickly pear cactus, overgrown weeds, languishing desert blooms, and a scattering of tombstones. Stanton's grave, however, lies about a mile outside of town in a desolate canyon circled by watchful vultures. He is not wanted in the town that bears his name. Damn. I just outcasted him, gave him a plot outside of town. Told him, dude, yeah, we don't want you here. Hey, what's up, Al? How you doing, man? That's the end of that one, folks. The next story is probably something that I think we've already covered this topic, but we'll go ahead and read it anyway. I know you guys have heard it from one of the other books that I've read. Alrighty. I don't know what you guys think of that story. Hey, what's up, 357? Let's go ahead and make sure we hit that like button, folks. Hey, that's no problem. That's what I like to do, man. Just go ahead and drop your link for your channel, and yeah, if you want to go ahead and drop your link, go right ahead. You're more than welcome to do that here. Alrighty, this one is the Apache Kid, Army Scout and Apache Rebel. Yeah, if you guys can all go to his channel and support Under a Blood Red Sky. He's almost at 1,000. Let's help him get him there. It was a pain in the ass for me to get to 1K, but I eventually got there, so I know the struggle, and believe me, the struggle is real. Alrighty. On May 3rd, 1887, the earth trembled across southwestern United States territory and northern New Mexico. The earthquake, estimated at about 7.2 magnitude, lasted a full minute, with massive rocks careening down mountains and huge fissures dashing jaggedly across the desert terrain, sending adobe homes crashing to the ground. Newspapers reported deep rumblings in the desert near the town of Superior, Arizona, where large pieces of rock were detached on all sides of Picket Post Mountain, raising a cloud of dust, and for several minutes it ascended about the mountain, giving it the appearance of a live volcano. About 20 miles east of Superior, Apache Indians forced to live on the San Carlos Indian Reservation believed that earthquakes foretold the one set of doom and disaster. To alleviate their fears, they gathered the brewed tiswin, a potent fermented mixture combining the heart of the maguey or mescal plant with fruits and vegetables. The ensuing Tiswin party altered the lives of many Apaches that day, but the life of Aske Bait Natal, known to the white known to the whites as Apache Kid or Kid for short, was changed beyond redemption. A trusted Indian scout with the white man's army on the San Carlos Indian Reservation, the Apache Kid knew his people were forbidden to brew the intoxicating Tiswin. But as he was mourning the slaying of his father, Toga de Chus, he joined the illegal gathering. Toga de Chus's murderer, Gonzizi, had been killed by Toga de Chus' friends, but as the eldest son, Kid was expected to avenge his father's death in his own way. Present photo of Apache Kid taken in 1888 at Globe, Arizona. Kid drank his share of the liquor and was soon plotting to kill Rip, the brother of Gonzizi. He enlisted his half brother, Askise Laha. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but anyway. Askise Laha, who was also an Indian scout, and the two rode off to rouse three more scouts before setting out to find Rip. Rip stood no chance against Kid's precise aim. He was dead before he hit the ground. Their mission a success, Kid and the four scouts returned to the reservation. They had been gone without permission for 5 days. Al Sieber, chief of the Indian Scouts, had been looking for his wayward men. For the most part, Sieber managed his troop of Indian Scouts with an iron hand and a compassionate heart. But trouble spewed across his face when the scraggly group appeared before him. Sieber demanded their weapons, and Kid was first to obey. A crowd gathered as Sieber ordered the men arrested and locked in the guardhouse. Smelly, bug-infested hole and furnished with only a handful of straw in a bucket. Suddenly shots rang out from the crowd, and Sieber, unarmed, fell to the ground with a bullet embodied in his ankle. Seizing the opportunity, Kid grabbed a horse and fled the ensuing melee. He did not intend to lose his freedom for avenging his father's death, something he was compelled to do according to Apache law. As he turned his back on the white man's rules and laws, his days as a trusted Indian scout were over. The Apache Kid was born around 1860 near the Arapahoe Canyon in eastern Arizona. A loose translation of his name, Brave and Tall and Will Come to a Mysterious End, seemed to predict his calamitous future. The Apache Kid was forced onto the San Carlos Indian Reservation, as were many Indians, through the actions of President Ulysses S. Grant, who established San Carlos in 1872. The government determined that the only way to control warring Apaches was to confine them to reservations where they were expected to raise crops instead of raiding nearby ranches. The Apache Kid's father was a member of Capitan Chiquito's band of White Mountain Apaches who in 1875 were herded onto the dry, desolate reservation aptly called Hell's 40 Acres. As a teenager, the Apache Kid seemed to adopt the reservation living. He learned to speak English and shunned the traditional dress of his father, opting to wear suit jackets, felt hats, and leather boots, white man's clothing. On the reservation, he was in charge of shooting cattle as they came into the pens for slaughter and became an expert marksman by running along fence lines surrounding the cattle pens while taking dead aim on the doomed creatures. He also herded cattle for ranchers in the nearby town of Globe. When white men found his name too hard to pronounce, they dubbed him Kid. Around 1879, Al Sieber made this cocky 19-year-old his orderly and cook. With Sieber's encouragement, Kid enlisted as an Indian Scout in 1881, re-enlisted 7 times until 1887. He often took time off between re-enlistments, and during one of these respites, he married and had a child. He looks like you, kind of. Oh, shit. The military quickly promoted Kid to first sergeant, a rank he held during most of his enlistment. When they discovered how accurately he could spot distant riders and decipher whether they were whites or Indians, he was considered better than any military posse at tracking down runaway Indians, and Sieber often relied on him to help train new Indian scouts. In 1882, he fought in the Battle of Big Dry Wash on the Tonto Rim near the town of Payson, and he accompanied Sieber into Mexico during the 1885 Geronimo campaign. He did not always toe the military line, however. In Mexico in late 1885, he got himself killed when he and 2 other scouts were accused of molesting a Mexican woman. As the scouts fled, shots rang out, 1 dead, 1 wounded, and a Kid arrested. Mexican authorities feared an international incident if they tried the scout, so they released him back to the States after charging him a $25 fine. When Sieber departed San Carlos for Fort Apache on an inspection trip just before that fateful day in May 1887, he left Kid in charge of the Indian Scouts. Tiswin and trouble soon merged into the incident that found the Apache Kid a renegade outlaw hunted by the very scouts he had trained. About a dozen rebels fled the reservation along with Kid, and his band increased in numbers as days turned into weeks. When 2 ranchers were found dead near Benson, their cattle butchered and horses long gone, word spread that the runaway Indians were the culprits. As the posse closed in, the Indians surrendered. On June 25, 1887, Kid and the 4 Indian Scouts who had ridden with him to avenge his father's death were tried for mutiny and desertion in a general court-martial. Kid wasted no time admitting his guilt. I am First Sergeant Kid, San Carlos, Arizona Territory. God sent bad spirit in my heart, I think. You all know all the people can't get along very well in the world. There are some good people and some bad people amongst them all. I'm not afraid to tell all these things because I have not done very much harm. I killed 1 man whose name is Rip because he killed my father. I am not educated like you and therefore can't say very much. If I had made any arrangement before I came in, I would not have given up my arms at Matt Sieber's tent. That is all I have to say. At the end of the day, all 5 scouts were found guilty and sentenced to death by shooting. When Military Commander General Nelson A. Miles reviewed the case, he requested leniency for the men, arguing they were ignorant, unlettered Indians, and while their deeds were certainly serious, they were not of that extreme gravity which would justify the death sentence. The same court that had condemned them to death reduced their sentences to life in prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. For 6 months, the Indians languished in the fetid San Carlos jail. On January 23rd, 1888, orders arrived transferring them not to Leavenworth military prison but to Alcatraz Island, California. Completed shortly before Kidd's arrival, Alcatraz boasted 185 wooden cells with 2-inch plank floor covered in sheet iron. The only ventilation in each cell came from a 4-inch gap above the door and a meager 2-inch space below. Fire was always a concern, and in March 1888, while Kidd was at Alcatraz, a blaze destroyed several buildings. The 5X scouts were freed from Alcatraz in October 1888 when Judge Advocate General G. Norman Lieber successfully argued that the white jury that had convicted them was prejudiced against the Apaches and the sentences handed down were too harsh for the crimes committed. Al Sieber was so angry when the Apache Kid reappeared at San Carlos that he immediately ordered him rearrested. He charged Kid with attempted murder, claiming his once trusted scout had fired the bullet that shattered his ankle. Sieber conveniently ignored the fact that Kid had handed over his gun before the shooting started. He also disregarded the time Kid had already served for the San Carlos incident and ordered Gila County Sheriff Glenn Reynolds to lock the former scout in the Globe jail. That evening, according to the Apache Kid biographer Phyllis de la Garza, bells clanged in the wooden tower at the Methodist Church, Globe's customary practice signifying bad Indians were in town. Sieber swore under oath that Kid had fired the shot that left him crippled for life. On October 30th, 1889, the Apache Kid was sentenced to 7 years in the Yuma Territorial Prison for the attempted murder of his mentor. 2 days later, he was on his way to Yuma. Threatening rain clouds hovered overhead that All Saints' Day as 8 handcuffed Apache convicts shuffled out of the Globe jail and boarded the stagecoach for Yuma prison. Stagecoach driver Eugene Middleton rubbed the dust off his brand new heavy-duty bright green Concord stagecoach with sunny yellow wheels as he watched the men board. Sheriff Reynolds and his deputy William Hunky Dory Holmes would escort the prisoners. Kid climbed into the coach and Reynolds secured leg irons on the man considered the most dangerous of his charges. The stage would carry the prisoners to Casa Grande, a 2-day trip from Globe. From there, they would board a train for the final trek into Yuma. Rain started falling before the stage skidded into the river station for the night. After supper, the prisoners lined up on benches, their leg irons and handcuffs securely tightened. And in this upright position, they tried to sleep. The next morning, the stage had to maneuver the wet, slippery Kelvin Grade and Middleton for the coach laden with passengers would not make it up in the muddy incline. Reynolds ordered the prisoners out of the coach, all except the Apache Kid and another convict shackled to him. Reynolds did not want Kid footloose. Middleton maneuvered the stage as Reynolds and Holmes escorted the prisoners on foot up Kelvin Grade. The Apaches talked among themselves, but since neither Reynolds nor Holmes spoke their language, their conversations were nothing more than gibberish to the 2 lawmen. Too bad for them. As the stagecoach disappeared around a bend, 2 prisoners attacked Reynolds while 2 more grabbed Holmes. Both men died instantly with bullet wounds from their own rifles. One of the prisoners ran toward the stage and fired at Middleton, sending him tumbling from the coach with a bullet through his mouth and neck. As the prisoners freed Kid and his companion, one angry Indian stood over the paralyzed Middleton, ready to smash his head with a rock. For some reason, Kid stopped the man and spared Middleton's life. The Indians disappeared on foot across the desert plain and into the hills as they knew so well. I know you guys have heard that one before. About the guy trying to smash the person's head with a rock, but the Apache Kid stopped him. I know you guys heard that one from one of the live streams I had before. News of the murders spread rapidly. The Silver Belt reported bloody clothing was found a few miles from the murder scene. A carcass of a steer was also discovered, a part of which had been taken and some of the hide stripped off and used for foot covering, as evidenced by the peculiar tracks made by one of the fugitives after leaving the spot. Al Sieber assumed Kidd had orchestrated the deadly escape and requested military posse to capture his nemesis. 5 Arizona forts responded with troops tracking the fugitive's trail of destruction. Although the prisoners were on foot and most were unarmed, the posses were no match for the elusive Apaches. Once Kidd was spotted near the San Carlos River, but he quickly vanished into the hills. Another time, a posse found a cave where the Indians camped, but they magically disappeared as the law closed in. The fugitives raided ranches and stole horses, then headed farther into the mountains. Territorial Governor Lewis Wolfley offered a $500 reward for the conviction of any outlaw Apaches. Still, no one could catch the swift-footed renegades, who were obviously making their way towards Mexico. The Apache Kid and the men who followed him became the most feared Indians in Arizona history. Ranchers were gunned down, their cattle butchered, and horses stolen. Cowboys were found with their heads split open. In March 1890, a freight hauler was murdered near Fort Thomas. That August, 3 men were killed at Hachita, about 50 miles southwest of Lordsburg, New Mexico. Even Western artist Frederick Remington feared crossing Kidd's path. While looking for a lost mine in Sonora, Mexico, Remington noted, "The vaqueros I'm riding with are not only looking for the lost mine at Taopa, but are also primed for a fight with the Kid if we cut his trail. And if he cuts ours, we may not live long enough to regret it." Eventually, 5 of the original 8 Apache prisoners were captured, 2 others killed. By October 1890, only Kidd remained free. Silver Bell considered him a legal target for those who can cock a gun and draw a bead through the sights of a Winchester. That December, 3 ranch hands killed an Indian they found butchering one of their steers. From the nearby brush, Kidd and his men came out shooting. The cowboys took shelter behind a large boulder, and gunfire resounded across the hillside for hours until one of the ranch hands barely dodged a bullet that shattered his corncob pipe. His 2 buddies, amused at his startled expression, carelessly leaned out from behind their boulder refuge. One was stopped in mid-laugh by a bullet in the head, and it was long before the second cowboy lay dead. The pipe-smoking gunman headed for the nearest ranch, successfully eluding Kidd and his men. But chances are he never lit up a pipe again. In 1891, an ex-Army scout said he chanced upon the Apache Kid in the Santa Catalina Mountains, about 20 miles north of Tucson. Another man backed off, and all day the two sat facing each other, their eyes never leaving the gaze of their adversary, knowing either could kill with one shot. Along about sundown, Kidd rose from his rock and announced he was leaving. As Kidd disappeared down the trail, "I lit a shuck for home," the old scout recalled years later. Hey, what's up, Cammed Up Caveman? How you doing, man? Occasionally, Kidd returned to the San Carlos Indian Reservation to retrieve bundles of food, clothing, and ammunition secreted in caves by his family and sympathetic friends. He often took a woman with him when he departed once again for the hills. Some of these women went willingly, while others had no choice. By November 1892, the territorial governor, Nathan Oakes Murphy, upped the reward to $6,000 for the capture or death of the Apache Kid. Several Arizona counties offered their own rewards, and since he was blamed for murders in New Mexico territory as well as south of the border, additional reward money resulted in a cumulative total of $15,000 on his head. So no one came near arresting the elusive Indian. In 1894, Al Sieber may be having a charge of heart maybe having a change of heart after falsely accusing his trusted scout of attempted murder, tried to get word to Kid that if he would turn himself in, Seymour would help clear his name with the reward money. Seymour waited at several designated spots for Kid to appear, but he never did. The December 1895 day was bone-chillingly cold as Horatio Merrill and his daughter Eliza steered their wagon from Pima toward the town of Clifton. About 6 miles from Ash Springs, they were attacked and slain. Lawmen believed at least 30 Indians, led by the Apache Kid, had set upon the pair. When they found the Indians' campsite, they discovered Eliza Merrill's purse nestled inside her newly acquired engagement ring lay undisturbed. As years passed, tales of the Apache Kid's death began to sprout as often as the offenses laid at his feet. From about 1895 until the 1930s, just about everyone had a story to tell. He was found dead in a cave, killed in a cornfield, ambushed at a waterhole, shot off his horse, and slain by Mexican rurales. Arizona pioneer Charles Ganong said Kid appeared at his Wickenburg campsite in 1895, obviously dying from consumption. That same year, rancher John Slaughter supposedly followed Kid into Mexico and killed him. In 1899, the chief of Mexican rurales claimed Kid was living peacefully in the Sierra Madre Mountains. In 1915, Kid was supposedly rode with Pancho Villa, rebel general of the Mexican Revolution. A nephew of Kid, Joe Adley, excuse me, Joe Adley said his uncle was still alive in Mexico in 1924, and as late as about 1935, an old cattleman swore he had recently talked with Kid, who claimed he and his family were living in Mexico. After that, the story stopped. Torn between bewildered laws in a white man's world and old Apache tribal traditions, the Apache Kid tried adopting to both and lost, wrote De La Garza. Freedom to live his life according to the Apache custom was all Haskell Tail wanted. The price of that freedom cost him dearly. Yeah. That won't see it for that one. Well, that's going to do it for that one, folks. Oh, what'd you guys think of that one? I know you guys have heard that one before. Hey, Eminem, what's up, man? I'm just here doing a live stream and sharing a little story with you folks. Awesome, guys. I do appreciate you guys very much. If you folks haven't already hit the like button, make sure you guys do. And under Blood Red Sky, I hope you have already gotten close to 1K there. If you're still in chat, sir. It's quite cold outside. It's cloudy. Yeah. No, it's quite all right, man. You can always go back and watch it. It's always going to be up. It'll be in. I'll have to set it to my playlist for my history in Arizona. But thank you guys very much. Hey, Luke Mitchell, how you doing, man? A little late, but nevertheless, I thank you for joining. If anybody is willing to send a little cash to get something warm to drink or eat or anything like that, it would be greatly appreciated. I do need batteries for my lights on my bike. If anybody's willing to help out with that, if not, it's quite all right. I do appreciate you guys very much, and appreciate your guys' support every time I go live. The Cash App and PayPal link is up above in chat. So I do thank you guys very much. And we shall catch you guys on the next one, hopefully tomorrow. We'll see how the weather is. And we'll come back to the same spot here. Hopefully I was going to go to that other room over there and the other little solarium in the library here, but there's a few people in there. And as Mrs. Egypt Broccoli knows, the, the guy that was there last time, he was just going off, man. He's just talking about this and that, and talking about Ukrainian women and how he's gonna marry one, and UFOs, and how the money is the devil's currency, and everything like that. And when I told him my age, he got up from his chair, and he was just a little too close to me. So, hey, what's up? You be chilling? Yeah, I'm about to close it out, guys. But yeah, the reason why I came over to this room is because nobody ever comes over here. Yeah, he was a little far out there. And just got a little too comfortable talking about how to make women orgasm and all this stuff. And I was like, I don't think I have any problem in that area, at least not that I know of. I mean, considering it's been a while since I've ever been with a female, I mean, at least a couple of years. But nonetheless, I don't have any trouble in that area. I like tell them, hey man, just lighten up on the conversation, you know what I mean? Yeah. I was lucky to come over here and get this room to myself here, so I do thank you guys again. And this video will be in my playlist. If you guys want to go through all my playlists, it's History in Arizona. I believe it's titled, or History something. But hey, what's up, realist? Yeah, it'll be in my playlist. So but yes, like I was saying, I'm about to close it out here and head back home. So thank you guys very much. This concludes this live stream with yours truly, Jose G, Lone Wolf of Arizona. Thank you guys very much, and we'll catch you guys hopefully tomorrow. Bye.